the record. Okay, so you're now being recorded. Okay, we're going to be talking about AI in art. So what that looks like. And then lastly, issues of bias in AI. And as educators, it's something that we really do need to be thinking about quite a bit. So we're going to move on, and Pamela Rabin is going to be taking over this section.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Alicia. I was really excited. This whole series that we've been doing lately called Curious About is honestly just things that we as a team are curious about, similar to what the name is. It's particularly around the area of AI right now. One of the things that, we stopped and thought about when we heard recently in the news about ChatGPT and other things that we're covering today, just, how much do we really use AI? Is it something that I use every day? And in going and looking at that, like right now, what I'm going to do is just kind of a very quick general overview, and then we'll kind of dig into the issues. But if you can switch to the next slide for me, Alicia. I read just recently a statistic that said when asked whether or not they use AI currently, about 33% of the people asked would say, no, I don't. When in reality, next slide, there is about 77% of the people in the world are using AI already and may not really even realize it. So just thinking about what we are talking about when we're talking about artificial intelligence, computers that are sort of thinking for us, what does that look like? I'm going to show you the next slide and see if you recognize any of the things on this slide. Because if you recognize any of these things, you are currently using intelligent computing models. So just as a beginning up in the upper left-hand corner, if you use a streaming service like Netflix or HBO Max or Spotify, Pandora, any of those, and it is making selections for you based on its history, it's learning about your preferences, and it is making suggestions that, hey, you might want to see this movie. That's AI. If any of you have picked up your phone recently, had to do the face scan, or are using that to get into your computer, that's AI. It's facial recognition. AI is also in chat that you do when you are talking to a chat bot, and you're talking to one and getting help somewhere. It's looking at what you're saying, and you may not be articulating it quite right, and it is sending you to the correct services. Artificial intelligence. Continuing my way across over to the upper right-hand corner, these are just visualizing computer systems. This is self-driving cars. This is facial recognition stuff that you might see at airports. Kind of also a little bit of future. It might have, if we look at wearables that you might have on your eyes, you might have languages and things that pop up and other information that's not there. We're really close to that, but there are things out there already doing it. My joke kind of in the lower left-hand corner is just asking Alexa, hey, Alexa, do I use AI every day? Because she's going to say, if you do the CAPTCHAs, that is a way of keeping information secure for you. It's determining whether or not you're a real person and giving you access to information on your computer. Grammarly is looking at your writing and telling you whether you have grammar mistakes. It also has now started making suggestions for you on how to improve your writing. So if you're like me and you tend to have run-on sentences, or apparently I use passive voice a little too much, it will tell you how to fix that and give you suggestions. Finally, I think a lot of people at least are using this. You have just a simple filter on your email is an AI type of program. The ones that I think are kind of interesting, and we have another class coming up that we were curious about wearable technologies and what that might have to do with education coming up in the future. I'm wearing my watch right now. It does monitor my heart rate if I want to. It tells me how many steps I'm doing. All of that downloads onto my phone, and we're not too far off from that phone connecting to my doctor's office and being able to make recommendations to them for my care. Something else I wanted you to think about is we used to talk a lot in ed tech about how students today are digital natives, that they've grown up in a world where they're, they don't know a world before technology. And if you think about it, the students who are now in school, young kids, they're not only digital natives, but they're also AI natives. So artificial intelligence is making decisions daily that are affecting their lives in some way, shape, or form. All right, Alicia, if you can give me the next slide. So just in the world of education and doing kind of some research of my own, looking at topics that might be involved with AI or in educational ways that we need to talk to students about, these are just some of the ideas that I noticed. Really important to have conversations with students around how to spot AI. You know, what does that look like? When are you using it? How do you know? Definitely careers and implications for career pathways in terms of programming, in terms of careers that may or may not be around in the future because AI has the ability to do them. And how then do you create something that is different? How do you personalize it? How do you not be replaced by a machine? The power of human creativity and empathy. You know, those kind of go hand in hand with your career implications. Like, what is it that people can do that AI can't? And research is tending towards looking at soft skills. That emotional human connection is something that we should be talking with students about and facilitating and encouraging with them. Creating in AI, just how to use it. Personalized learning, how is it making decisions on what I'm funneling in front of students, what career paths they're taking, you know, whether or not they need remediation or they can move forward. Kind of what's their role in solving problems with AI? So can they use it to go out into the world and have it assist them? And then there's finally, we'll be talking about these a little bit today, ethical concerns around it. You know, is there bias in AI and how might that be something that educators should be aware of, and what can we do to help mitigate for those circumstances? And then the last one is the yellow one. I kind of focused on this, you know, keeping in mind with students that we want to create AI with human compassion. So while that is something that makes us different, how are we creating these systems so that they care for humans and are not, you know, turning into sort of our worst nightmare? All right, next slide, please, Alicia. So our big kind of theme and thoughts for this presentation today is how do educators ensure students become thoughtful users of AI? I know there's a lot of talk right now about blocking various AIs or trying to get them out of the hands of kids. And we know many of us who've been around a while, we tried to block YouTube from schools for a long time. And there are things that we block and there's, you know, a balance there. But we know at some point in their lives, they're going to come into contact with various forms of it. So how do we create thoughtful users? And then even how do we create students who can create these powerful tools, because they are the creators of the future. Next slide, please. So I'm going to hand off a discussion around ChatGPT to my colleague, Mark.
Hi, guys. So yeah, as Alicia said, ChatGPT largely is the elephant in the room, and I'm sure we all are, it's probably the hook as to why a lot of you guys are here. And so we definitely wanted to spend some time talking about ChatGPT, because if you've been paying attention, there's a lot of information coming out constantly, as well as the reaction with which you know, certain school districts, what decisions that they're making around this technology. And I just want to give us an opportunity to kind of see what it can do, find out about its limitations, and also kind of consider not only, because I think our initial reaction as educators is to immediately go to the, like, what are the negative uses of this technology? And I don't want that to be the entire focus of this discussion. I also want to look at, you know, ways that we can actually bring this technology into our classroom to, at the end of the day, positively benefit our students, because that's really why we are all here. When I know that, like, time is a commodity, time is precious, and you're choosing to spend your time here. So thank you guys for being here for this. Next slide, Alicia, please. So just in case you're unaware, I do want to quickly go over what ChatGPT is. So the GPT portion stands for Generative Pre-Training Transformer. It's an AI model that is designed to generate human-like text and is trained on a large data set of human-generated text and is able to generate new text in a similar style and content. And then the chat in the title refers to the fact that it can be used in a chat setting to generate responses that to user input in real time. And that sounded very normal to you guys. And that was also, that entire thing I just presented was actually created entirely by ChatGPT as well. I used that to define itself, essentially. Now, one quick note about ChatGPT is that the data set that it's operating on only goes up until 2021. So if you ask it things like who won the most recent World Cup, it's not going to know that. Everything it has is based on 2021 and prior. All right, we can go to the next slide. So I'm going to model ChatGPT for you in a few minutes. I'm actually going to show some stuff on my screen, and I'm going to ask you guys if you want to. Otherwise, I mean, I was an English teacher. I can create a prompt real quickly. But if there's any English teachers or social science teachers or any teacher that has done a prompt with writing recently with students, if you could just, while I'm presenting this information, put it in the chat. And if there's something there for me to use, I will use it. Otherwise, I'll create something myself. But I want you guys to think about while I'm showing this technology off is essentially what difficulties and opportunities do you foresee in education with this technology widely available? And anything that comes to your mind, feel free to put in the chat or not. That is entirely up to you, as you see fit. Okay, so next slide, please. In order to use ChatGPT, it's actually very surprisingly simple. I have a link there that will work when you have access to these slides, and it'll take you to ChatGPT. If you guys want to follow along yourself, literally just type ChatGPT into a Google search, and the very first link will go to OpenAI, and then you'll click the Try ChatGPT button in the lower left-hand corner. I'm going to show it to you guys in just a second. You can hit login, choose your Google account, and then you're ready to go. So I'm going to go and share my screen now, and I'm going to show you what all that looks like. I'm going to take over control, Alicia. All right, is everyone able to see my screen? All right, so this is the main website. So if you just type ChatGPT into Google and you click the OpenAI link, it'll take you here. You just click this button here, and it will ask you to log in, and you can log in with any Google account, and then it will look like this. Actually, it will look like this, but I've selected dark mode. And there's no difference, it's just darker. So I saw that someone posted in the chat that they have a synthesis essay on mental health, synthesizing multiple sources, I'm assuming. Let's just take an essay on mental health. Write an essay, oh, I should model proper behavior, there we go. Write an essay on the mental health impact of social media on teenagers. And so you'll send a request, and then ChatGPT will start writing your essay for you. Now, obviously, without any parameters, it's going to kind of write whatever it sees as an essay, which is our pretty standard 5-paragraph essay: introduction, body paragraph, body paragraph, body paragraph, conclusion. 9 times out of 10, it will do something like that. Now, you can set parameters on it. Things like write a 3-paragraph essay, or write a short summary, or write 1 paragraph. You can also ask it to change what it's written, and I'll model that in just a second. So for example, I'm going to ask that it will write the essay. I mean, I could say it even, but write the essay with a 10th grade reading level. This actually might not change it enough. Let's do, for you guys to see the differences. Let's do 5th grade reading level, because it's already kind of writing at that like 10 to 12th grade reading level. But you can customize it entirely to whatever age group they're looking to do. All of these things you can do, and this is just the essay component. Okay. We can also change the writing style, as someone has mentioned. So Paul, one thing that and thank you, this is a perfect segue. As it becomes more and more popular, society is kind of putting some pressures on the company behind this to limit some of its impacts. And so if you reference it to do something in the style of the King James Bible, for example, it's going to say that it will not be able to do that. But you can say in the style, like create a sonnet or write in the style of Shakespeare, and it will do that. So if I write that in the style of the King James Bible, it should not be able to do the request. Oh, okay. It actually is. This was new. About 3 days ago, I wasn't able to do anything in the King James Bible style. Apparently, they've relinquished that restriction. So that's actually good to know. But yeah, so again, you can see that you could literally change styles. You can write songs. You can write a song in the style of Taylor Swift, in the style of whomever you want, and it will start, like the Beatles, and it will start mirroring those styles. And it does more than just write essays. It does more than just write sonnets. Write a haiku about rain in San Diego. A lot of people said that one thing AI can't do is creative stuff. Okay, so it can also do that. It can also do math, right? So let's send out the math request. There's a lot that this technology can do. So this gives you kind of an idea of essentially what this can do just in an unfiltered space. Okay, and I want to show you a few things. I'm going to go back to our presentation now. You can also have it, yes, as Mr. Dominguez is mentioning, you can have it write lesson plans. You can have it creating models. We're going to actually get into a lot of that, which is, I'm glad that we're thinking of that because that's the direction that we kind of want to go in. Okay. So here is another example of something that we've done where we took a text, we had to generate a text, and we make it, simplify it or change it in some way, the previous text that was generated. I showed that with the essay. Here's another example of an essay. Some of these are put in because, just so you guys are aware, because it's become so popular, and if you aren't sure if our students are aware of this technology yet, they are, because it's on TikTok. And once it hit TikTok, largely their servers got flooded. And so what's really interesting is if you're trying to access ChatGPT, a lot of times during school hours, it's actually down because they have so many users going on, but on the weekends you can go in and play with it. But they're expanding their servers. This is just a temporary roadblock. Okay, also on your screen, you can see that it can write code as well in pretty much any language. I had my cousin who is a software developer was over at my house, and I had him having it write in Kotlin, and he was saying this pretty much correct. Okay, so these are all things that it can do. All right, so this is just kind of a recap of what we've done. So we've had it define things, we've had it write essays, math equations, coding in a variety of languages, and all of these things are customizable to the user submitting the request, essentially. And so immediately people are probably wondering, like, oh my goodness, or can our students use this? And like, how can we tell, like, if you want them to write an authentic essay and this technology exists? I do believe that that's a very reasonable concern. So there are ways that you can actually detect whether or not only ChatGPT, but any other, chatbot based off of the GPT program is being used in their assignments. So the first thing that you will notice is that it is very, very formulaic in its writing. Okay, it follows an algorithm, it follows a pattern, and it's very similar to that pattern that we kind of teach our students. Like I said, we're going to type an essay, and it's going to be a generic, like I didn't give it any parameters, and it rattled off a 5-paragraph essay. And I don't know if you guys caught, but the last paragraph started with in conclusion, right? So it's very, very formulaic in how it constructs what it is that it writes. Okay, there's going to be a certain pattern that it follows, and it also uses very simple sentence construction. And so if you are having them write an essay, maybe you're having them do a synthesis essay on mental health, right? What I would do is I would go into ChatGPT as the teacher, and I did spend like 10 years as an English teacher. I would go in to ChatGPT and I would literally generate the essay. And by the way, I haven't actually said this yet. If I submitted the exact same essay request, like literally word for word, the next essay that it generates will be different. Okay, so it's not going to get caught on, like turnitin.com is not going to necessarily like flag that for plagiarism, right? And so what you would want to do is go in, type in your essay prompt, generate it 3 times approximately, and then you can look through any common veins, because even though it's writing it differently, it still is largely pulling the same information. So even though the words and the sentence construction might be a little bit different, the actual content itself will follow a very similar pattern, and certain features are going to be displayed like at the same points in the essay. And so even though the essays are different, you can still see how it wants to respond to your prompt. And then if you find a similar essay like that as you are grading, that will kind of alert you that, hey, this might be something generated by an AI and not written by a student. Also, and this goes across the board, not just English, but into like coding and into math. I wrote like ChatGPT can be confidently incorrect because it just pulls information, right? And so there are times that the information that it's disseminating is not accurate, but it believes it is accurate. So it will sell you this information is accurate. And so just because they're pulling the information from an AI, as long as you're reviewing the material, it will, you know, it could be wrong. AI is not going to be correct every single time. And then there's also a link here to an external website called GPT-0, which I'll show you guys really quick. This is actually created by a college student who's for the last 3 years has been studying AI. So you can go to GPT-0, and if you scroll down, so this sign up is not what you want. We're going to scroll down and we're just going to hit try it right here. And it takes a little bit of time because now this website is starting to get noticed by educators. But this is all free. It takes a little bit to load this page, but it's going to come up. And you can literally copy and paste any text that you have some concerns about into this text box that it'll generate, and then run, basically just run it, and it will tell you whether or not the text is AI generated or not. So I'm actually not going, I'm going to continue on, but while I'm continuing on, I'm going to select this text. I'm going to put it in here, okay? And then I'm just Control Enter to start the system, essentially. Okay, so it's analyzing it now. While it's doing that, you can see it already has the complexity of 8. That's very, very low. It's going to say that this is generated by AI. While this is running, I want to continue my presentation just out of time, and then I'll come back to this. So some ideas of things to do that you can do like out of the box with Chat GPT, because again, we don't want you to think, oh my goodness, it's only going to be used for illegitimate reasons. There's a lot of stuff that this technology can do, and I already saw some of you guys mentioning it. Like for one, you can generate, like if you're having trouble, like maybe I don't know how I want to present this information, you can use Chat GPT to assist with that. You also can use it to generate writing samples, right? For your students. What does it do well? What does it not do well? What things should be, you know, where, right? You can also do an authentic research assignment. Let's say, for example, you don't want them to write an essay. It's almost kind of like it's like maybe a new model of an annotated bibliography. You don't need them to write an essay. You can have them use ChatGPT to generate an essay on the topic that they're studying, and then they need to use the internet to go out and find those supporting sources of information. Right now, unless you specifically request a source of information, or, you know, for example, if you say write an essay about Martin Luther King and cite one source, it will probably pull from one of his speeches, right? Those things are widely accessible. But in general, the sources that it generates, if you request sources, don't actually exist. So if you ask a student to, you know, write an essay and use sources, and he goes into, or she goes into ChatGPT, generates that essay with sources, generally what ChatGPT creates doesn't actually exist. And so we can use that and have students, you know, go in, they're going to create an essay, they're not going to generate any sources, but now they need to use the internet to research and find supporting sources of information and kind of fact check ChatGPT and give them that authentic research activity that way. And again, like I mentioned, you can generate multiple essays on a similar topic and compare them, and kind of like, you know, have a writing workshop. What is the takeaway for effective writing? And then most powerfully, in my opinion, is you can actually use ChatGPT for specific personalized tutoring. You can also generate customized lesson plans that fit the needs of specific students. So for differentiated instruction, ChatGPT is actually a very, very powerful tool, as well as use it for like reteaching opportunities. If you have students struggling to, you know, effectively create a conclusion, they can go into ChatGPT. And I'm going to finish up soon by going over to see what our analysis said about that essay. And you can say, you know, like what belongs in the conclusion of an informative essay. And it will generate that right there for any student struggling on that portion of writing, right? And this applies beyond, right? This applies to math classes, this applies to science classes, this applies to social science classes, this applies to even, you know, computer science classes. One of the interesting things is if you say, you know, write a line of code that says hello world in HTML, it doesn't typically just write the line of code. It explains what each designation within there is. So even though we look at this and sit there and go, oh my goodness, they're going to use the cheat, there's also a lot of valuable learning experiences here, because not always are we able to specifically pinpoint where a student is struggling, and we can use this to kind of find those areas and re-explain things in a way that we didn't think of before. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So if you scroll down, so it kind of goes into, it shows the algorithm for everything, what the complexity is, the burstiness, and then is the perplexity of it. You can get your GPT-0 result. And it will tell you if it believes that it was generated by AI or not. When I was playing around with this program, I generated an essay. I ran it through this, and it said it did believe that it was generated by an AI. And then I went and found one of my old essays that I wrote in college, and I plugged it into this, and then it said that it was generated by human text. So at least in terms of that very, very limited size, it was accurate. And hopefully this, it does take a little bit of time between. So this isn't, in my opinion, this isn't going to be a solution that you use for every single essay that gets submitted. However, you know, for when your meter goes off and you're like, hey, I know what my students are capable of, I don't know if this is something that they would be writing, this doesn't sound like it's their voice, on a case-by-case basis, you can definitely use this just to check and find out. So you can see the text that I picked from ChatGPT was identified as most likely to be AI generated, and we know that that was what happened. So these are all tools that you guys can use, because ultimately I feel like there's a lot of positive applications for technologies like this. And so whether or not school districts, you know, ban the use of ChatGPT, our students have access to this at home as well. And so we can either kind of learn to adapt through, you know, using techniques like this. And also there's just a lot of good to come with it for our students in general. And so I do think that in the coming months and years, it's going to be very interesting to see what the response is through our school districts across, you know, San Diego, California, and the United States, but also how effective teachers are going to be utilizing these technologies to improve student outcomes. And with that, Alicia, do you want to take over screen sharing again?
Sure. We have time for 1 or 2 questions if they're quick, if you want to ask a question regarding ChatGPT. And you can unmute yourself if you would like. No questions? Okay.
Hey, Joe's got his hand up.
Oh, okay. You can unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I really appreciate the timeliness of this. This is really, really good timing. And are there going to be follow-up sessions on this as we more of it comes into focus?
Maybe. The thing about I'm curious about is we try to change it each time. And so we may be having follow-up on it. We're kind of exploring that. So
I think this is a really cool forum for, like, if there's a way for those of us that are going to go out and explore this ourselves to maybe, I don't know, I'm not sure, other than my colleagues outside of my school, how I would expand my knowledge of what we discover in the next couple months. But yeah, maybe a follow-up session for my own personal benefit would be awesome.
of course, we can always look into that, and we can do different things with maybe just have we do our EdTech network. And so maybe this could be a chat in our EdTech network in the future, or we can even just schedule things. We always have the ability to do that. So of course, thank you for that feedback.
And
Another question?
Stephanie asked a question about how do we recommend teaching writing with this new technology available? And I do think that it's going to kind of shift our perspective on like how we teach writing. I think that no matter what is like pretty straightforward. And I was listening to this podcast last week when a lot of this was kind of exploding, and it really was creating a very interesting conversation where it's like we're shocked that AI can imitate humans, right? But in reality, we've been training for years humans how to write like a computer because we're very formulaic and very template driven. And so when essentially a computer program can follow a formula and a template to create writing, we shouldn't be very surprised when that's how we're also writing ourselves. So I do think that it's going to cause a little bit of, cause teachers to kind of shift. How do we, like, what's the next steps? Like, where do we go from that? And where do we start? Because like you won't be able to have an AI generate your voice, right? Or generate a creative voice where there's complexity in the writing. And so how do we embed some of that complexity in the writing is, I think, where the conversation is going to need to go. How do we give our students opportunities to establish a writing style, to establish their voice, and also to create complexity in their writing? I think that's the direction that we're going to need to go in.
And as a former English teacher, what I would do is I would ask my students to generate an essay, and then I would ask them to embed sources and cite some of that information in there. So if the essay says that, for instance, Mars is a planet, I would ask them to do some research on that. Tell me more about what it says. And so I would use it as almost like that starting point for students to really dive, because what it can't do is it can't do that really deep dive of research. It can't go into Eric and check on Eric. It can't go into EBSCO and do that type of research. So I would ask them to do a deep dive. I would put in the rubric, you must have 10 sources. These need to be sources that come from XYZ. And so I would use this again as that platform, and then have students do that deeper dive. And I think it's a really good place for that. I think that there's a lot of ways that you can get creative with it instead of banning it. So you asked how I would teach English with it, and that's how I would start with it.
Also, Jen asks, if I require the use of 3 articles that I've attached an argumentative essay, then ChatGPT can't use those sources. If the articles are available online prior to an arbitrary date in 2021, it likely can. It likely would be able to write that essay.
Yeah. It wouldn't be able to go behind a firewall though. Like, so if you have it like on EBSCO or something like that, somebody had asked that earlier. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on, Jessica.
All right, hey guys. So I know most of you guys probably came for ChatGPT, but there are some cool things going on in the art world with AI that could be useful in the classroom, and definitely a lot of sources of debate topics for your students, because some of this has caused quite an uproar in the art community. All of these pictures are from different AI generators, so you can see some of what AI produces is very abstract, kind of creepy, and other things that it produces are very realistic and hard to tell that it's not an actual dog or cat that exists. These are all AI generated. DALL-E 2 and Lensa are 2 of the most popular ones right now, but there are over 20 different art generators. And once you guys get these slides, you can see this article here that will outline a whole bunch of them that are out there. So essentially what the AI art generators are like ChatGPT. They take some kind of input and create an artistic output. So Lensa and DALL-E are the 2 most popular ones right now because they're kind of the most accessible. There are lots of other ones that are mostly accessible to industry folks and people that are, on the deeper places of the internet. But Lensa is an app that anybody can download, but you'd have to pay to use it. Dolly is open now, but that's a recent improvement. It used to just be open to people that had signed up on this wait list. So that's why you'll hear these two terms the most in this presentation and probably in articles that you're reading. There are two different kinds of AI art generators. One is text-based, like ChatGPT. Dolly actually is also an open AI resource, so it uses the same kind of algorithms that takes text prompts like a teapot in the shape of an avocado, and it produces these images that you can choose from. Or you have collection of image prompts. So Lensa has exploded in the social media circuit right now at the end of 2022. And essentially you're uploading, I think, 20 selfies, and it turns those selfies into a collection of different artistic renderings that you can pay to download. So those are the two different kinds of generators that are out there right now. What's the hype? Lensa is probably the most popular one that you've been seeing with their magic avatar feature. Lots of celebrities have done this and put them as their avatars on social media, lots of influencers. And many artists see these in a positive light, that these could be ways to expand on their own original art, but probably more artists have a lot of concerns, which can pose really interesting discussion topics in your classrooms and learning opportunities for kids. So the next few slides will go over some of those concerns. The first major one is this considered theft of living artists, or is this more of an inspired by situation? AI and the art generators are trained, just like ChatGPT combs the internet for different pieces of writing. These AI generators are combing them for images, some of which are created by living artists that are trying to make a living, and they are not paid or credited for these algorithms using their art. So this is a really fascinating article by the comic artist Sarah Anderson, if you have time to read it, who tried out Dolly by putting her name as the prompt, comic by Sarah Anderson, and this on the left is her original work, and this on the right is what Dolly created. So obviously pretty wonky and doesn't really tell a story, but very clearly copying her style. So Dolly was able to know just from her name that this is her style and hit it pretty spot on. And these applications are only going to get better and more refined. So as we go into the next few years, will it be able to copy and create comics that she could have wrote that are possibly credited to her by people on the internet when it's not really her, or people are making money off of the art that's generated on by these AIs that is in her style? That's a really cutting edge topic for your debate classes. Is this ethical? What are the implications of this copyright law? Is it copywriting her actual work? Are you able to copyright a style? Lots of things that students could have an opinion on, especially if you're doing like argumentative writing or debate with your students right now. Another big topic is data privacy. So most schools, teachers, librarians have some kind of component of media literacy in high school curriculum. And these different art generators are posing really interesting questions around data privacy. All of the generators I've come across are listed as only 13 and up for security reasons. But the way that they use the information that you're uploading, especially Lensa, when you're uploading selfies, pictures of yourself that are uploaded to this AI that spits out other representations of you. They claim to delete all those images after the AI generated images are generated, but there's also some really cloudy language in their terms and conditions that make the ownership of those images a little less certain. And the AI images they generated aren't protected by copyright because of a prior precedented case that states copyright law only applies to human generated works of art. So who owns those artistic renderings of you once AI has created them is a really important thing for students to know because Lens is super appealing. But what happens to that data that they're uploading? What happens to these renderings of them after they've been created? Sort of a new frontier in data privacy. And then just to kind of side note, this image was generated. I used deepai.org to generate an image for this slide. I just typed in data privacy and it had me choose a style. So I picked cyberpunk and this is the image that it generated. So I'll get into using these in PowerPoint slides in a minute, but also an opportunity for your students to use some images in their work. Another important topic for students to think about is, will AI replace human artists, which is obviously the #1 concern of artists out there, but it is sort of already happening. So Tor is a publishing company for fantasy novels mainly, and they recently used AI to generate cover art for a book because of some weird time constraints. They said, let's just use an AI image, and you know, that's somebody's job. There are people that are creating images for books, and now companies could potentially use AI to generate a book cover in 30 seconds. Another instance of this was that an AI generated image recently won first place in an art contest at the Colorado State Fair, even though it was credited as an AI generated art. So the judges knew that this was not a human created piece of art. They still gave it first place at the Colorado State Fair. So this is already happening, and you may have students in your classroom that are pursuing a career in art. And so it's important to think about, you know, what skills do we focus on for them? How do we help them create a path for themselves as artists using this technology, and think about, you know, how can we use AI to help artists? Not only is the artist job at risk, but there are a lot of peripheral jobs around art that could potentially be impacted by AI. And so this is a really quick clip from The View of all things, but it highlights a really interesting problem that we're seeing today. So I'm just going to play this. It's about a minute long.
I can't hear the sound. I'm not sure if others are having the same issue.
Find out she's a digital creation. Yeah. Yes, yes. She is a digital creation made by a white man. And she is now getting all these modeling gigs and getting paid for it.
Do they wait by the door for her to show up?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And I felt some kind of way about
Are
that.
there people hearing
It
that?
wasn't like a cultural appropriation thing because he's a white guy. And he has a black woman that he works with that writes the content. But it was just, what about the beautiful, real people that are dark skinned that have been excluded from the industry? What about the makeup artists? What about the hairstylists? What about the photographers? What about all those people that, because it's an art form. And then all of a sudden you're going to make somebody up? I didn't like it.
Okay, sorry, I got like a weird echo, so I stopped the video, but I thought that was interesting that not only is it taking the artist jobs, but people that are on the periphery of art, like the makeup artists and things like that.
Instagram.
Okay. It also brings up another question, which Alicia will talk on next, about the racism and bias in these AI generators, and how what we feed into the algorithms to train these AIs, you know, essentially the robots shouldn't be racist or biased, but because of how they're being trained, we do see instances popping up. And this is another fascinating article from a journalist for The Medium who tried out Lensa, and you can see this is her on the left, and this is what Lensa created on the right. So she says it just seemed that the app did not know what to do when faced with a black face. There were also different influencers out there from many different national or ethnicities that were having the same kind of issues. So it's an interesting topic for students to tackle. And also, you know, how are we going to combat this? Okay, so this slide is just sort of a summary of the last few slides, different points of discussion or debate that you could use with your students around AI. especially since argumentative writing is one of those skills that's assessed. Why not give them a really like juicy topic, a really cutting edge topic to think about? Other potential positive uses in school settings, keep in mind, most of these are 13 years and up. They could use these generators to create illustrations for their stories, their projects, PowerPoint presentations, advertisements and logos, just as easily as doing a Google search for an image. They could use an AI generator to generate an image that's very specific to their story or what they're working on. Case in point is an article you guys might have seen. I saw it all over the place this weekend of this guy who wrote a children's book entirely using AI. He used ChatGPT to write the story, and then he used the art generator Midjourney to create all the artwork for it. Created it, posted it on Amazon, published it, and now has a children's book. So there are a lot of feelings people have about that, but it's just really interesting to follow his Twitter thread to see how he created that. Potentially, you could use some of those components to have your students write short stories or illustrate their own short stories. You could also think about using it to teach or assess different art styles. Historically, there are different ways you can tweak the art to show different styles. You could, let me open this for you guys. I wanted to show you DALL-E 2. This is just a page that goes through some of their prompts because like ChatGPT, DALL-E has been very impacted by the popularity and has been crashing on me lately. But another potential use is for rapid prototyping. So one thing you could do is give it these prompts that you can switch up. So this one works with fashion. You could change colors.
Jessica, you're not sharing your screen, just so you know, it's my screen that's being shared. So we're not seeing what you have on there.
About that. I thought I was being shared. Okay. Can I take over?
Of course.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
There you go.
So can you guys see it now? Okay. So for rapid prototyping, you can type in different things. This uses fashion and kind of like interior design for them to see what a product or a piece of art could potentially look like, that they could use that to get some inspiration or to rapid prototype different things. And that is it for art and AI.
Can you just continue sharing your screen, Jessica, please?
Sure.
Thanks. Okay, so we've gone over a few things today. We've gone over what is AI. We've gone over AI and how it can generate essays through Chat GPT. We've talked about the art component, and now we're just going to really talk about an experience I had with AI. So a while ago, I took a career assessment test. And during that career assessment test, I filled out all the answers. I put my name up there, filled out all the answers, didn't put my age, but it came back and it said that the best job for me would be chicken farming. And all of that was generated through AI. By the way, I answered those questions. And so now what we're really going to talk about is, what does that mean? And what does that mean to our students if they and we as teachers are using AI to make some determinations? So next slide, please. So what we're really talking about in AI is bias that is built into it. And we see this bias in AI in a lot of different fields. We see it in education. We see it in hiring practices. We see it in the decisions that are made. A lot of times an organization will use AI in job hiring. Has anybody ever had to take a personality test before they got hired with a job? That is AI. That is at times determining if they hire you or not. It was really big a while ago, and then some lawsuits came out and they decided to take that away. But it's coming up in different ways, in the ways people fill out their job applications. It's no longer a lot of times screened by a person, it's screened by a machine, an AI machine. And they're looking at certain elements of that job description, sometimes a name, sometimes the way your sentences are structured. If they ask you to fill out a written question, sometimes they're looking at, it will weed you out based off of experience or education. So all of those things are generated by AI. And it also helps with our decision making. How many of us have asked Alexa, play me some music, play me something that will make me relax? And then all of a sudden, yacht rock comes on. Well, I happen to relax really well to Metallica, not yacht rocks, but now Alexa thinks that that's what I listen to. So I'm stuck with Christopher Cross. So again, it makes those decisions for us that we probably wouldn't be making ourselves, but it starts letting us know this is what we want. This is what we do. All of that is bias. And we as educators need to be really aware of that as we start to use it within our classrooms. So, next slide, please, Jessica. So some examples. AI is written by algorithms. Basically, behind the scenes, there's a lot of math problems, a lot of coding that is happening. And anytime somebody does some input, an output comes out. So a lot of times in high schools, they'll use AI generated tests to determine what careers students should go into or what majors students should go into. Had I followed my AI track, I would now be a farmer. Nothing wrong with it. There's plenty of jobs in farm. I come from farm people. My grandpa was a farmer. I know that there's a great farm in Encinitas that we take our students to that shows there's a whole business side, but that's not where it was directing me to. How many of us have seen, maybe our students have taken some tests and maybe it's been iReady, maybe it's been Brain Pop, and it has said this student belongs in this reading group or this student belongs in this group. All of that is AI. And if we're just depending on that one source, that one data source, we're not getting that full picture of students. And that's the thing that happens with all of these algorithms that are created in AI. It's just providing us one source. And at times it can be biased. So again, when you start thinking about how you're using AI in your classroom, you want to think about, am I really varying the different ways I'm assessing students? So I'm getting this full view of those students, and I'm not just sticking to one algorithm or one data source. So one of the reasons why that is happening is because the people who are writing codes and who have been in the backgrounds for many, many years have all really been the same type of people. If you look at computer science courses at universities and who's working for these computer science companies, you're not seeing a lot of diversity. You're not seeing people that have different backgrounds. You're not seeing people of color. And therefore, that a lot of these codes are being written from their perspective. And so students and job applicants and music tastes are being created based off of this small diverse group, non-diverse group. So what we have to do as educators, we have to, number one, be aware of that. And number two, start to think about how can we start pushing our students into, especially our students of color, our students who have a diverse background, into these STEM courses, these STEM fields, so that they are helping us combat this problem of bias in AI. And next slide, please. So I kind of talked about that, combating that bias in AI, but then also we need to think about how do we as educators vary our how we assess our students and vary what we look at as data points. So typically in research, there's something called triangulation, and it says that you want to always look at 3 data points when assessing a student or assessing a situation. And that's what we need to start doing when we're specifically using this type of AI. So we want to combat, okay, if I have a student and I'm using iReady for this, and I'm also using chat, I'm doing a essay, what's something else I can do to assess the student's reading? Can I pull them up? Can I have them read to me? Can I have them read in small groups? Can I have them do reading logs that they're handwriting it? So how can I assess this reading that's happening? So you want to start to think about those assessments with your students and combating that. And then on a larger scale, we want to think about how do we start to push our students into these high-paying careers that where they will start generating this code and this the algorithms for the AI. Okay. So that concludes our Curious About AI at 4:59. We have 1 minute or 2 minutes for some questions if you would like to ask a couple questions. Anybody like to ask some questions? And I'm not sure we're 100% going to have the answers for them because we are just curious about this and just scratching the surface of it. So.
I also will put in the chat the bit.ly to see the presentation at this point. Is that okay, Alicia?
Yeah, that's of course. Please do. All right. Looks like a lot of people are hopping off. So again, thank you for coming. Our next AI is going to be curious about how to use AR, VR within the classroom. And then following that, we're going to be doing a curious about BAPA and curious about wearable tech. So those will be coming up. We'll also be doing an ed tech network that is going to be with our lawyers about social media and how do we work in an environment where social media is so prevalent.
I also put a link to our EdTech network. And if the bit.ly link is not working, you can also just manually type it. And if you want, you can also send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat and I can send it to you that way as well.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much. And we are going to be stepping out. We'll give everybody a couple of minutes and then we'll be closing the meeting. I'm going to stop recording.